Fantastic. Welcome all to the game design panel. We have 3 nice panelists to discuss game design. So why don't we start off with having you all introduce yourselves and tell us about your journey and what you studied, and a little bit about your work history. Mary, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, sure. So my name's Mary, and I work currently at Exploding Kittens as a game designer. And I started off in fine arts and worked my way to comics, and then eventually game design. And now I am full time working as a game designer.
Very cool. Alexander?
Hi, thanks for having me here. So yeah, I'm a game designer, freelance game designer, mostly work in systems design professionally, and then I also teach as an adjunct professor at the NYU Game Center, and also over at Parsons in the New School. And what was the second part? Work history.
What you study in school and your work history and background information, really.
Cool. Yeah. I road to games. I worked professionally for a number of years as an analytics consultant. So my like undergrad, I studied economic history, but then it didn't take, and I went to art school and got an MFA, and have worked in games ever since.
Very cool. Chao?
Everybody, my name is Chao. I'm right now currently at Playdots as a game designer. Before Playdots, after I graduated from undergrad, I just went to game industry. I work at Tencent as a game designer, and then I applied for NYU Game Center. I got my, same as Alexander, got my MFA at NYU Game Center, and then I also worked at Tilting Point as a game design consulting people. And then after I graduated, I'm at Playdots right now.
Great. I also forgot to introduce myself. I'm Dylan. I'm a Hunter student. I'm also an econ major, and I love video games, so that's why I'm pursuing that end there. So we'll move on to the second question here. What exactly do you all do currently? What are your responsibilities at your current position, and what might be a typical day be like, and maybe bring up a few things that you wouldn't necessarily expect from your position. We can start with Mary again.
Sure. So starting off the week, we usually have a team check-in where we catch up on the projects that we're working on and what the state of the project is in. There are a couple different stages, and you're basically taking a game from concept all the way through to handing it off to production. So part of that is coming up with ideas based off of the audience for the company. And sometimes it's ideas that are given to you and you're shepherding them through to final product. Yeah.
Cool. Alexander?
I guess in my professional practice, I don't work in a as a full-time member of a team like Mary and Chao, so it's a little more fragmented, and depends on kind of what projects I'm working on, but it's not so dissimilar. But it's usually a lot of meetings where you talk about things, and then in kind of my brand of design and systems and really economy design, it's a lot of spreadsheets. It's like my native language, and so it's usually working on Excel files or Google Sheets and stuff like that, and doing a whole bunch of numbers, and then sending those Google Sheets to other people to see what they think, and that's kind of usually the day to day.
Great. Chao?
Yes. So right now I'm at Dot. I do mostly system design as Alexander do, but I also do mechanic design and level design. My day-to-day is every day we have a daily stand-up. So got to meet my teammates in Zoom face-to-face and say hello, and then and then everyone says, oh, what we are trying to achieve, like everyone, what I'm trying to achieve today. And then I will look at my calendar today. If I have meetings, I attend the meetings. If not, I will either work on my game design documents, like game design specs I'm working on right now, or I host a lot of meetings. If I'm the feature owner, I will check in with my teammates to see what the progress is, how can I help, are they blocked? Yes, and then talk with other game designers. If I have spec ready, we got like a design spec review and a lot of discussion and meeting notes.
Amazing. So what might be a few different specializations in game design that you're familiar with? Do digital game designers need to know how to code? And what might be some of the differences between analog and digital game design? How often do you use game design documents? And give us a brief, what is it, if you don't mind? Mary?
Yeah, that was a lot. I'm going to try to...
I can always repeat it.
Well, I think the big difference between analog and digital would be that you have a physical prototype, and iterating on it is immediate and hands-on, whereas for digital, you could be programming and working on something for a while and then see that iterative process, I think at a possibly slower rate, but I'm not sure. Yeah. What was the other?
Do game designers need to know how to code?
I think so. I'm fairly certain that can only help.
That's because I thought you might be our contraposition on, since you work in analog and tabletop and stuff, but you think it's useful even in
you're gonna love this, Alexander. I'm only laughing because Alexander was my economics professor at NYU, and I use Excel sheets all the time now. And boy, do I need to know formulas. So that is an active thing that is very useful even to the prototyping of systems that are on paper.
Did you cover what were...
And that wasn't a
No, it's just, that's one of those things that, like, I guess a surprising thing is I'm using Excel all the time.
Did you answer if there were a few different specializations? Like, what are a few different specializations in game design?
I mean, I'm trying to think because it's not necessarily... Are we talking about the company, or are we talking about like different things that you can do in the spectrum of game design? Because for us, it's basically game designers, production team. We have like higher up calls that are done by people higher up in the ladder. But mostly we just have game designer.
Alrighty. Well, Alexander, would you like to add on to anything or answer the questions yourself?
Yeah. What was part A of the question? What was before program?
It was the questions were, what are a few different specializations? Do digital game designers need to know how to code? What are some of the differences between analog and digital? And how would you use game design documents, and a brief explanation of what that exactly is.
But yeah, I think that's the funny thing, is that how many different kinds of like game designer you can be, like that. I would like, it's like you could look at that at what Mary does on a day-to-day and what I do, and see that they're clearly in like the same genre of thing, but I bet are pretty different, because like I don't do at least in things I'm working on professionally, I don't do paper prototyping very often. It's usually I'm often working on games that are actually already released sometimes, like and I'm doing balancing and things like that. And so I don't do a lot of prototyping. It's one of the things that I like about teaching, is that I get to do more paperwork and stuff like that. But I think there's probably a lot of similarities, and likewise with NHL's work at Playdots is like, we're doing prototyping mechanics and stuff like that. So it's like, yeah, like game designers like encompasses all these like very different sorts of roles, where you can be, really focused on, what players are doing, and like level design would be a good example of that, right? Like where it's almost like a division of architecture, right? Like you're really thinking about how a space works and things like that, versus like, I don't know, like economy balancing, I think is just like modeling in a spreadsheet. Like you're just, balancing numbers and trying to get things in a certain way, or you're visualizing data. Like it's almost like it feels like a very different discipline, even though it's like not so dissimilar from one side. So it's weird. Yeah. So there are a lot of different specializations, even under the heading of game designer. And that's even, as Mary said, setting aside like, production and art team, like all the other jobs, music, like that are part of making a digital game. Yeah, knowing how to code, I think can't hurt you, certainly. It's a useful sort of skill, but I don't think it should ever be like a barrier. I think definitely the best game designers that I know tend to be like, okay programmers, like they know how to do it, are not like the I don't know, the chosen one of programming. I don't know what so I definitely don't. I think people maybe overemphasize, but it's just kind of a useful thing to know. And then game design documents. I've never had to write like a full, like the old school style, like like a 100 pages or 50 pages like game top to bottom. I've never had to do that, but I've had to do more targeted, like here's a particular section of a game, or or something that's like kind of more small scale. But it depends on the teams, and also the like level of formality. On Dear Reader, a game that I work on that's in Apple Arcade, it's a procedural word puzzle game using the word text of real public domain literature. Check it out if you have an Apple Arcade subscription. That team, we've been working together for like 3 to 7 years. Me, 3.5 years, but some of the people on the team have worked much longer. And so the game design document requirements are like, on like there's much more of a shorthand. Like it's much less formalized, because we all know each other's, like, so people just do quick mock-ups and stuff. Like it's like nothing so well organized as like proper game design documents, because it's like we have a shared drive and just kind of share things, and so it's much more formal, or less formal.
Chao, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, I feel like for adults, we definitely have very separate level designer and assistant designer. It's like, because we have 2 dots, which is a puzzle game, we have a lot of level, and level are our very important content of the game. So we have dedicated level designers just work on making levels. And then besides that, sometimes I work on levels as well. But then right now my day-to-day job mostly is on system design. So when you talk about game design documents, so I'm heavily in this space. It's like I write game design spec all the time, and it depends how big the system is. Sometimes the design could be very long, and we have been always trying to come up with like game design template. So for other design, they could quickly jump into a spec and then quickly spec out stuff, and like overview what kind of themes that must be included in the proper document that everyone gonna read if they are gonna work on that. It's like overview and the functional summary, how the UI UX mockup is, how the product like analyst or like thinking, what's the rollout plan, like a lot of details you need to think through when you are making a system, and they are all included in the game design document. does digital game designer need to know how to code? I don't think it's necessary, because right now I don't code because I work with professional programmers to help me to code the system I'm working on. So I don't need it, but I think it's definitely helpful if you know how to code. As Alexander mentioned, that at DOTS, there's was some time that I'm working on prototypes, so it will be very helpful that I know how to code. At least I can read like code that is already exist in the game, and then I can do some quick tuning on those code to make a prototype that with a gameplay I want to try, and quickly make it playable on my phone to get a view of the prototype. So it's definitely helpful, and also depends on how you want to develop your career. Because like if you're focused on only on game design, like just heavily on paper document work, then you're game designer, senior game designer, principal game designer. You only work on the design space. You don't need to know code. But if you want to go to the direction, the production direction, it's like game designer. Maybe you want to be a game producer or a game director in the future, that you're going to lead a team. Then it will definitely helpful that you know how to code, and you know what the engineer is talking about when they talk about Unity stuff, like what part of the Unity, you know what they are talking about, you know how to communicate with them. That is really helpful if you're going to do leading a team. And what's the other house? What are the difference between analog and digital game design? I feel okay, so that questions, I feel like when you work on analog game, you have a physical scene and you can, go out and test with people. That's the thing that I miss, that when at my game center, we can make paper prototype and quickly test with people and get feedback. And the thing about work on digital game design, maybe just because on like business setting, like a big project, I find that a lot of times you spend a lot of you spend time with other game design to discuss your game design spec very detailedly, because you will not have the scene until you got artists, engineers together, like a lot of human resource put in to build the feature, and then you can play on it. So you need to make sure before those resources being put in on this feature, you need to really think through all the details about the feature, so you can really like play testing then, or play with them, or getting feedback really early about how that is. Mostly it's just having the game design document and talk with other game designers about those decisions. Yeah, so I think that's the big difference.
Cool, thank you for that. So what are some of the soft and hard skills that you think is required to be successful at what you all do? And are there any specific program software that you use? Mary?
Sure. So I already mentioned Excel, just tracking even like card iterations and stuff, like that's how we do it. Since now we're playtesting in a digital space, we've had to use Tabletop Simulator, playingcards.io, like a whole bunch of like anything that can help us test during COVID times. So while we do still make physical prototypes, and my strength coming in actually was my broad range of experience with materials and feel and texture. Like I can speak to that sort of experience, like table presence and all of that, a lot easier, I think. Knowing how to write rules, super important, and knowing how to like play test those different types of play testing that you can run at different stages, how to pitch your ideas, because as I think we talked about full design documents, but we don't necessarily do that all the time. So just in a like elevator pitches, you gotta just communicate your thought. So I find that is a very, very useful skill. Being able to know the games that are in the market, like super, super relevant. You should be able to speak to other games that are within yeah, within your market. Yeah, I think those are the top ones for me.
Great. Alexander?
Yeah, that's a good rundown. Yeah, soft or hard skills. I think I don't have too much to add to Mary's. A lot of kind of I don't know, like whatever diagrammatic tool you like. Like I know people who like the Google Draw or whatever, but there's like a whole bunch of these like node, things that can allow you to do documentation work and stuff. Even I like some people who come from more like the UI design world who use like Balsamic and like stuff that's meant for what are those called, wireframes and stuff like that can be helpful to a game designer. And there was a good question in the Q&A was, are Excel and Google Sheets interchangeable? Is knowing one Excel is just better. Like it's just like but Google Sheets is totally fine. Yeah, that's what most people use anyway. I'm like the only person who uses like Excel proper. But it's more of it's because it's browser based, so it always feels like being like underwater to me using Google Sheets. Like there's like a microsecond delay, Like I don't know, but they're the same. But I'm trying to soft skills. I think is like game design as opposed to like game development. Game design is like a lot of soft skills. I think as I like super underscore what Mary said, it's all about communication and like and empathy, really. Like I think that's the mark of a good design. It's like because it's all about thinking. You're like making these kind of castles in the sky in your mind, like that you're thinking about other people like all the time with game design. But if you can't communicate it, like then you need to typically a game designer has to enlist a lot of other people in their art form. And so if you can't communicate it, then you can't. It'll never get articulated. People won't understand what it is that you're trying to build. And so like being able to communicate your ideas and like listen to other people's ideas and stuff like all that, like being a good communicator, I think is like a huge part of game design.
Great. Chow?
I totally agree with Mary and Alexander that I think like game design is all about communication. I like for hard skill is like how to use Zoom, how to use Slack, how to use Doc like Google Doc or whatever you are using to do your game design document. But communication is huge. It's like not only that you present your game design document, but also how to enroll the discussion to with other game designers, and also writing meeting notes. I think it's part of the communication. It's like after the communication, while you're doing the communication, you need to write the notes. Otherwise, you just forgot it after the meeting. And also, as a game designer, you need to host a meeting. Or as a feature owner, if like this is a system you design, you might work with other people to make it to be a interactable, playable experience on the phone. Then you have to hosting meetings, and you need to know how what's the meeting agenda is, and how to inspire the conversations happening, and make sure that everyone got a chance to speak, to develop their opinions, and have a good discussion.
Yeah, taking notes is such a good. I think that's a great tip. That was my thing I stole from Eric Zimmerman, who's a great game designer. Works on readers. Like these little he always has these little notebooks for taking notes in. And I was like not much of a note taker before studying game design. Like I don't know, just the regular amount, I guess, in a professional way. But yeah, there's something about like. It's very hard to discuss ideas in game design. A lot of times you're talking about something that doesn't exist, right? Like, and how something will interact and things like that. It's very hard to, so getting into the habit of writing down what people are saying and stuff like that is it's something you have to practice. Like it's not a like, oh, you're like naturally good at note taking. Maybe some people are, but it's a good thing, I think.
Definitely not. And to be honest, I feel like I'm still practicing it. Like the most difficult part is those three things happen at the same time. It's like you are hosting a meeting, also present your game design spec, but also people are discussion and you need to taking notes. And I find it's very, 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 very challenging.
I agree. I'm recently begun doing games stuff and we're actually presenting with Waffle Games as well. Serenity Edge Studios, if you ever want to go check out the game that we made. But the note taking, that's totally true. I mean, it can get very overwhelming to discuss all these different aspects of like goals that you'd like to have implemented, and in order to organize yourself and everyone else, you need to keep track of it all. So very, very good stuff here. So let's see. What life, work, educational experience has helped you in the most in pursuing your career goals? Mary?
I would say all of it. I just find that like any skills that I've built, they always come in handy. I just feel like it's sort of a katamari of skills where you just figure out what you're doing and then you just go forward with more precision and also just a bunch of skills that you can apply to it. And while some of those don't get actively used, it's always good to just have it in the back pocket of like, an example would be like streaming. It's the funniest thing ever, but like both at my first job that I worked at Move 38 and now at Exploding Kittens, like out of nowhere, the need for streaming and for someone who understands streaming and the streaming communities is there. And it's not something I expected or, I don't know, thought about at all when I was applying to game design jobs. But it's something that I'm passionate about and something that I can easily be like, oh, hey, like, tag me. So.
Cool. Alexander?
Well, I feel like we mentioned Excel a lot already, but I'll talk about it more because that was definitely something I thought I was like leaving behind when I stopped being a consultant and like went to art school. I was like, you know, I guess I won't be using Excel anymore, but I was wrong. So that definitely came in handy. But I think I totally agree with Mary that idea of like whatever it is that you do or like that things and whatever skills you have and stuff like that, I think will get put into service of your, you know, your whatever you do creatively. And so actually on that note, then I think it's important just to have interests and skills outside of games. I think that like that's probably an underlooked sort of thing is cultivating interests that aren't games, because you need to have references that are broader than, it's like on one hand you need to like know everything ever about games, but on the other it's also really helpful to like not know anything about games and to have interests that are like, you know, that you are into some particular genre of literature or film or knitting, like whatever it is, because then you bring these kind of new ideas into games. So I think you know, not just being what's the like a monocrop, like you don't want to just have this like one interest, and so making sure that you're exposing yourself to new things. I try to make a habit of, if I don't have, well, before the pandemic, was like making an effort to like go to museums that I haven't been to before and stuff, and just like see things that I haven't seen before and take notes on any ideas that I have, like to like make sure that I'm like seeing things that are new and I'm experiencing new things, because otherwise you can get kind of just the, you know, rehashing the same old ideas.
Diversify your garden. Chow?
I feel like life. Can you hear my voice twice?
Yeah.
Oh,
just me.
Maybe Alexander, you might mute yourself.
Oh, cool. I feel like life, work, and education, they all help me in some way. I think my experience of at NY Game Center, what I learned is how to giving feedback, like a critique other people's game, and I find it's come very handy when we work with other game designers. Like each other, we are all share our game design spec, and then we want to engage in those discussion. You want to give good feedback to their game design spec. And for work, I think my work experience in other game company like in Tencent, that the skills I learned through this work experience, like data analyst or familiar with the mobile game industry in general on system design. It's definitely helpful that you are very familiar with this space and you're an expert on a certain genre. And for life, I feel like being able to talk with your colleagues, being friend, and just be a nice kind of person, and chat with very casual or very everyday interesting stuff, like what you're doing for a weekend or what kind of museum you did go. I feel like have this knowledge of a common life and being able to chat with people is important, of which I didn't have when I first come to US, to be honest, because I don't know what people are talking about. I don't have any context, and I seem to be here very weird when I was talking with people. And then after so many years, I'm finally building up the context of what people are talking about and being able to engage in those daily conversations, which is, I think, a big improvement of me.
For sure. So again, it falls under soft skills, which is something you need to cultivate, definitely. Let's see, we have one more question, and then we're going to move on to the Q&A. So what are some things that people who are interested in pursuing a career in game design can do to start that process today? Mary?
Playing games. I know that sounds like such an easy thing, but I'm constantly shocked at how little I know. And I thought I played enough games throughout my life. Turns out not. And you can only learn more from playing more and playing with a critical eye. Like playing once to just enjoy the experience, and then second time around, like really sort of analyze it and break it. Yeah, even if you're doing that in writing or in casual conversation, that's a huge step already. And then the follow-up to that is, like, if you write about it or talk to the devs about it, that's not only helpful for the team and the company that made the game, but it also helps you start building rapport, especially with games that you like, for example, and like indie creators, just growing that community for yourself.
Great. Thank you, Mary. Alexander?
Yeah, I think I think that's a good. Playing games is good. I would add, I guess, and making games is good. That like I think a lot of people think that there's a higher barrier to being able to make a game than there is digital even, but especially analog. Like, you know, if you have a stack of note cards or something, then like you have all the materials needed to be a game designer. Like, and that making prototypes and is, I think, the best way to. You just have to make stuff, and that and making things will, like, you know, create more ideas and stuff, and also tells you like what I think the thing that people who want to work in games who get discouraged is because they there's like this phenomenon where people basically just want to make Skyrim or something. They're like their dream game, their like opus is like, oh, I want to work in games, but the game I want to make, it just happens to be a 200-hour giant, it's the size square mileage of all of the Americas, and it'll have shooting mechanics and RPG mechanics. So like they want to make this like giant thing. So like, don't do that, but just like slim, like what's like a new mechanic, like what's a fun interaction and stuff like that, and prototyping things like that are small is like infinitely more productive than kind of like building this cathedral in your mind that's going to be impossible to execute on. And so making small things, I think, is a like really good entryway into making games.
For sure. Chow, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I feel like as on Alexander's of making games, I think if you want to be a game designer, you should really start to practice your game design mindset. Is like when you are playing games, how to see the game not as a player but as a game designer. So like when you so after you have the experience of making games, you probably know it will think like, okay, why is this game is designed this mechanic this way? Or why is this game designed this system this way? Why these two games, they have different approach to this the same system? Why they made this decision? Is this decision the best for this game? And I find that after you have this game design mindset, you really can learn more stuff while you still playing all kinds of games that you are playing. And another thing is how to articulate the game design decisions. I feel this is really important skill that as a game designer. I think people think a game designer is people who have good ideas, but actually there's a difference between people like good idea people versus a professional game designer. Is professional game designer is not only say like I like this idea, but also they can articulate what are the bullet points of why I like this idea, and they can go to very deep and very details of their reasons. And I find this a important skill as a professional game designer.
Great. We do have to move on to the Q&A, and if you all just want to, whoever wants to pick up on the question, I'll read them and we'll go from there. Has there ever been a moment when where you pushed back against a game design that someone else suggested out of fear it would out of fear that that it would unintentionally frustrate the other player from rejecting their suggestion? Whoever wants to pick it up.
I feel like in game design discussion, I kind of can't do that, but as a game designer, I feel it's also another skill is how to reject people's idea very nicely. That feels like you're receptive to their critique, their feedback. I'm definitely think through this idea. You just feel like their respect and their voice has been heard. But also, if you're the feature owner, you're still the one who's gonna make the final decision.
I agree. Does anyone want to add anything, or should I move on to the next question?
Yeah, I think that's yeah, it's an excellent answer. That like it's so easy, I think, to like when you're discussing a design, and so you're communicating with someone, you both have these different mental models of the game that you're discussing. And so someone might say something and it might sound to you like a really terrible idea, but that's because it's like it's their idea projected onto your mental model of the game, and that might not be actually what they're talking about. And so so learning to okay, that sounds bad to me, but but I could be wrong. Like I might not understand exactly. And so as Chow said, it's learning to not be like, well, nope, that's a terrible idea, we're not going to do that. Is a huge part of discussing ideas is being able to negotiate and put that kind of pushback on someone else's ideas.
And I would also add that if you have a document that you're working off of, you can always go back to that document and say, like, it's not working for the reason that this is one of our goals. So, it doesn't have to be dry. It could be love that idea, but it's not helping us achieve what we laid out.
It's definitely a good way to put it. Let them down gently, or at least maybe try to incorporate it in some aspect that's feasible. I'm not sure though. So the next question we have, how often do you play test? Do you always do something with the information gleaned from the play test, or does it go through another department first, like UX?
Well, I can jump in. if I could, I'd be playtesting every day, but usually it's 2 to 3 times a week, and they'll be like 30-minute sessions, hour-long sessions. But the hope is that we're playtesting as much as possible. So it will never be less than that. And yeah, the ideal is that you go into a playtest, can iterate really quickly, and then jump into the second playtest. So,
Anyone care to add?
I feel I playtest when I was making level. I playtest all the time. I make it and then I place immediately. And when I was working on systems, I playtest when whatever engineer have a prototype or have a milestone that I need to playtest, so I can give feedback on the work that is going on. Or if other game designer have a prototype about the feature they're working on, I also will playtest them, so I can give feedback to their feature and system as well. So like basically every day you could playtest.
Yeah, and in my like in a lot of the things that I work on are I do a lot of kind of data driven design stuff. So I'll do a lot of analytics based. So like just getting player data from a game and using that to make design decisions. So it's sort of like, so it's not the same as playtesting because you don't have the same kind of insight into like but with like if you craft like, you know, how many players got to this point? What was their average score at that time, and stuff like that, and using that to make decisions. So especially for economy-driven stuff, like seeing one person play it doesn't tell me anything, or it's something like I'm testing something that requires 20 hours of play. Like I can't sit down and see one playtester play it. So it's sort of this kind of like more abstracted kind of playtesting, which brings its own challenges of you know, crafting, because you don't know exactly what people are thinking and stuff like that. But yeah, you can't ever playtest enough. It's the name of the game.
Great. We have like less than a minute left, but maybe let's try to answer this last question quickly. What makes you go, wow, that's a good game designer? It's a lot more easy to discern in like art, music, and programming, but what's the secret sauce that makes a designer in your eyes? Quickly, if you can.
They articulate their game design decisions.
I would say if their game is short and sweet, and I want to play it again.
Yeah, I think in like an elegance of the things that they've articulated. If it's got that kind of quality of something I haven't seen before, and I can understand, like, and then but reading it, I'm like, oh yeah, I can see that that's good. Like then that's oh yeah, that's a good game. So. But yeah, it's a great question.
So thank you all very much, Mary, Alexander, and Chow, for spending the time to answer the questions and to be here at Waffle Games. I think that's it.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. And great hearing from everybody.
Yeah, thank you for hosting. You're awesome. Yeah.
Cool.